Well, I hope you can hear me. My name is Dorothee Herr. I'm with the IUCN Global Marine and Polar Program, and it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon to talk about mangroves. I know it's been a long, exhausting few days, so very grateful for everyone to still come to this pavilion this afternoon and talk a little bit about growing action awareness around mangroves. So this is, we're going to launch two things today. One is a new awareness campaign as well as the new mangrove principles, which you'll hear about in due course. We also have a set of interventions both from NGO representatives as well as governments. We have to do a slight shift in the order given that some dignitaries have to go to the closings which are happening straight after here. So kindly bear with us if it's not exactly as you might have seen it in the agenda. This is also an event co-hosted by IUCN, but also its partners WWF and Wetlands International jointly with the German BMZ, so the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, which all together support the Save Our Mangroves Now initiative. But now, without further ado, introducing our first speaker, which actually does not need an introduction, because if you've been to mangrove events, you one way or another have heard Ambassador Peter Thompson speak about mangroves, and he has been a great supporter. So how could we do a mangrove event here without you? Peter, over to you.
So apologies for that, but I thought I saw a Kenyan colleague present, and as you know, Kenya and Portugal are co-hosting the UN Ocean Conference in the middle of next year. So I just wanted to say hello. And of course, Minister, the Growing Blue Conference in Mozambique, I've really enjoyed being part of the original one of that, and I hope to in some way be part of the second. Do you want to move that computer off there so I can take mine? Oh, no, don't worry. Here, take it. I'll try and remember what I was going to say. Look, let me just start. It's a long day. Let's relax a bit. I come from mangrove coasts in Fiji. Pretty much all my life, there was mangroves between me and the sea. If you want to go to the beach, you go somewhere else. We had mangroves. So when we were kids, our thing was to go to some building site, and we used to take the used ones. We didn't take the new ones. We would liberate some corrugated iron sheets from the building site, take them home, bang them with hammers, turn them into little tin boats. We'd take the hot tar off the road and put it into where the gaps were, and then we would launch our tin boats at high tide into the little creek, which was near our backyard. From that little creek, which is as wide as this, it grew to a big creek after about a quarter of a mile of paddling with your hands. Through the mangroves, you reach the lagoon. So for us, the mangrove was the playground. And in that playground, it was a place of wonder for little kids going along in our tin boats. There's no sound, only your hands going in the water. The sound came from the mangroves. And those of you who are mangrove people, you know how noisy a healthy mangrove forest is. The birds shooting overhead, the echoing sounds of the birds, the herons, the lorikeets, all the noises they're making are echoing because of the water and because of all the trees in between. The clicking of the little crabs, and then the rustle of the big crabs as they're moving through the mud and through the roots. And then seeing all those baby fish like us, we were babies, seeing all those fish all around us, because that's the nursery. Those fish can't go out in the lagoon. If they go there, they'll get eaten. They stay in the mangroves. Seeing that amazing little fish, the mud skipper, when we came close to it, he'll climb up the tree. The fish climbs up the tree with his bulging eyes. So this is the wonder of mangroves. And it wasn't till much later, of course, that mangrove forest I'm talking about there has long ago been surrendered to urbanization and the reclamation for housing and so on. There's still a creek there, but there's not much mangrove left. So You know, I think in most of our lifetimes, I don't know what the figure is, but mangroves are treated so drastically. And the tragedy of it, apart from all that beauty that I was just describing, is that mangrove forests sequester more than 4 times the carbon that the terrestrial cousins, the trees, sequester. And yet, people just regard mangroves as a nuisance or something to be used for firewood. So we have to turn that around, and the Global Mangrove Alliance that IUCN has been part of, the initiatives like this Roots of Hope. This is central work for us, for climate change, but also in the redressing of our relationship with nature to one of respect and balance, where it should be. And I think there's nothing more than coral reefs or mangroves to symbolize the importance of redressing that. Look, I'd just like to say, I started off by talking about UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon next year, which the conference, let's remember, is about keeping integrity of implementation of this thing, SDG 14, which we all agreed to, all of our countries in 2015, to conserve and sustainably use the ocean's resources. We know it's not happening. We know the harmful fisheries are still there. We know the overfishing is still there. The illegal fishing is still there. We know the marine pollution is still happening. It's all happening. So, we have to keep the pressure on. And that's why Portugal and Kenya are co-hosting this in Lisbon, middle of next year, UN Ocean Conference. And in the build-up to that conference, the last thing I'll say, Dorothea, is there are these things which the member states of the United Nations have called for this, for the conference in Lisbon. A whole new round of voluntary commitments. Because when we held the 2017 conference in New York, when I was president of the General Assembly, we saw an awakening of the need for ocean action. And part of that awakening was the registration of 1,500 voluntary commitments in favor of SDG 14, made by nations, made by organizations like IUCN. So UNDESA has very carefully shepherded those commitments, and we've recently done a report on which ones have exceeded, which haven't. But one of the things the member states have done in the approach to the Lisbon conference is they've called for a whole new round of voluntary commitments. So please, after this meeting, put your thinking caps on and think about voluntary commitments that you can make in favor of mangroves for the Lisbon conference, and just register it with the United Nations. DESA is the place to do it. Let's do it for mangroves so that our children and our grandchildren will be able to know the kind of beauty and have the services of mangroves which I've just been describing. Thank you very much, ministers.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Thompson. So we will, again, as I said, a quick change.
Sorry, I didn't have my computer. I wanted to thank IUCN and the Ramsar Convention, because they are the co-chairs of the Mangrove Community of Ocean Action, which is supporting the conference in Lisbon. So thank you to you guys.
Pleasure, and we'll exactly use the principles to help mobilize that community even further. So wonderful, thank you, Ambassador. As Honorable Minister Maibezi Yvette also has to go to the closing, would like to ask you now to join us for a few remarks about the wonderful work that Mozambique is doing. The Save Our Mangroves Now initiative is supporting and working with our colleagues there in Mozambique, and I'm hearing so many great things from the country, what you're doing, so can't wait to hear it now directly from you. So,
thank you for giving me the floor. Good afternoon to all. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to start my intervention by sharing that for Mozambique, a coastal state with an immense mangrove forest, the mangrove ecosystem is an important national natural heritage and represents a significant percentage in the African continent. Despite this reality that we are now sharing, the country has faced over time a marked degradation and loss of this valuable habitat through eminently natural causes as human activities, such as urban expansion and unsustainable use of this ecosystem in a country cyclical affected by extreme events like negative impacts of climate change, and also considering this social, economic, and environmental importance of the mangrove ecosystem in Mozambique, the government has approved in December 2020 the National Strategy for the Conservation of Mangroves. This strategy was developed through a participatory and inclusive process of civil society, academia, local governing bodies, government and non-government organizations, and private sector. The overall objective of this strategy focus on conservation, management, and monitoring of the mangrove ecosystem in order to contribute to a great environmental, economic, and social resilience of the country. This strategy is also based on 5 pillars, which are the strategy foresees actions in the context of education and awareness of local communities, research, management, inspections, and also restoration of all the ecosystems. In this context, and in line with the Sustainable Development Goal, as the ambassador was sharing before, Mozambique plans to restore by 2022 over 5,000 hectares of mangroves along the entire Mozambican coast. And also recognizing that the implementation of a national strategy entails challenges of multi-sectoral coordination, partnership were established with various sectors of the society, cooperation partners, development and development agencies. In July 2021, the country launched, as I was sharing before, the National Mangrove Restoration Program under the slogan, Mangrove Restored, Mozambique Resilient. A national movement motivated and committed to the success and achievement of restoration goals was taking place within Mozambique. With this anchor program for mitigation climate change effects, we want the Mozambican society to engage without reservation in the implementation of the mangrove management strategy and make it aware of the importance of saving and managing this ecosystem. We also want to share that IUCN has been a long partner of Mozambique, giving supporting to restoration initiatives on mangrove programs in 3 coastal districts of Mozambique communities, and in active participatory in the development of various legal and policy guiding instruments in the country. To this end, other plans and actions include designing a package of options for alternative livelihood and income generation activities, which communities depend on this habitat. We also incorporate of effective conservation through establishment of formal and community conservation areas of this ecosystem, obtaining alternative financing through the Blue Bonds mechanism, and finally improvement of knowledge on the mangrove ecosystem from an anthropological, social, economic, and biological perspective within our communities. We also believe that for the success of this mangrove conservation and restoration program, coordination and inclusive activities are critical, and in this context, harmonized mangrove principles are key to guide the achievements of global goals of conservation and maintenance of mangrove ecosystems, whether local, national, or international levels. Thus, we wish to continue as a country and as a government represented in these sections on the support and involvement of cooperation partners and non-governmental organizations, national and foreign, to whom we extend our profound gratitude for this partnership. I thank you for your attention.
Wonderful. What inspiring words, and really congratulations on what Mozambique has really already achieved and how you can help lead the world on this action. Also, Minister Mambezi, if you need to go to the closing, thank you very much for joining. Yeah, well, now we're going back to a bit more the original setup, and I know Minister Elmi is able to stay a bit longer. Yeah, wonderful. That we want to actually show you the awareness campaign Roots of Hope. So I would like to ask for that video to quickly be shown.
Around 1 million animal and plant species are now threatened with extinction. Yet over 55 bird, reptile, amphibian and mammal species are found solely in mangroves. These ecosystems help our climate, protect our coastlines and provide us with food. They are the guardians of our oceans. They provide over 120 million people with livelihoods and contribute an estimated $1.6 billion each year to local economies across the world. We need mangroves now more than ever. They are our roots of hope.
So yeah, this is the quick video showing the Roots of Hope campaign that we want to engage further around the globe. And I invite Giuseppe Di Carlo, the Deputy Lead for Ocean Practice of WWF, to say us a few words. WWF is a trusted partner in this initiative, so thank you for joining.
Let me say, first of all, good afternoon to everyone, Excellencies, Ministers. It's really a great pleasure to be here. And before I begin, let me say, I haven't seen Dorothee in 10 years. And it's such a pleasure to find a lost friend and to be together again after such a long time. So that's one of the pleasure of this sort of events. I share some of Peter's excitement about mangroves. I did not grow up in Fiji. I grew up in Italy, but I did spend a lot of time in the mangroves roots of Madagascar, Ecuador, Belize, Kenya, many other places of the world. And every chance I could, I would take my mask and go swim in between the roots, looking at the barracudas and the fish and the crabs. And you get the feeling of what a mysterious and incredible world mangroves provide. They provide them for coasts, for land, for people, for oceans. So really mangroves tick all the boxes, especially when we talk about nature-based solutions, when we talk about climate change, and of course thinking about the recent findings of the IPCC report, I would say that mangroves are pretty key if we want to achieve the world we dream to achieve, and we so much talk about these very days. And I think Roots of Hope is perhaps the best name we could give to this campaign, which WWF supports. It really shows the ambition of something that we talk about, but when you look at the numbers, Peter didn't remember the figures, but we lost almost 40% of the global mangrove cover. So it's pretty significant, all things considered. And unfortunately, mangroves are not alone in terms of the impacts we have as humans on ecosystems. And so again, mangroves tick the boxes, thinking about carbon storage, thinking about nature-based solutions, thinking about the communities that live along the coast. They really depend on mangroves. We're talking about over 200 million people. So I think those principles are intended to be able to drive us and guide us and help us on the implementation of a set of activities that will hopefully drive us to the ambition of restoring 20% of mangroves by 2030. And as WWF, we're very committed to work together, not just with IUCN and all friends, like I said, but with all the governments and partners, with all the hands on deck that we can. I think we're committed to that. I think we all share a dream, and I think it's possible with this principle to have a tool to make that dream happen. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Giuseppe. Indeed, it's been a while since we last met in person. Yeah, so actually, well, Giuseppe already did the great introduction over to the principle. So we have one slide that just shows you quickly the sort of main categories. It's, if you like, not groundbreaking in the sense that we talk about mangroves needs to be used equitably, there needs to be finance for mangroves, there needs to be the engagement with the government, the communities, the international community. But it was really an attempt with the sort of awareness campaign to rally up the troops behind such an endeavor of really, like Giuseppe said as well, give it more action, more ambition. And in that sense, we're trying also now, as they are now officially launched, to really have more governments, more NGOs really rally up behind those and sort of carry them from here around the world. And we have already heard, and we hear more from some of our leaders in the Western Indian Ocean of how good mangrove work can be done. But I did say in the beginning that we work very closely and are very generously supported by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and we are very happy that we have Mr. Wolfram Morgenroth-Klein with us, who shares a bit the perspective from the German side and why a focus on mangrove is important.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today with our partners, World Wildlife Fund and IUCN, and to celebrate the success of our joint initiative, Save Our Mangroves Now. We launched this initiative 4 years ago with the aim of raising political awareness and halting the ongoing loss of mangroves. Now I had 2 paragraphs describing the miracle of mangroves, but I will not read that out because Peter Thompson has put it in so beautiful words, with much more experience in the actual the contribution that mangroves pose to our ecosystem and to the economy of local communities, that it is really impossible to say it better. Protecting and restoring mangrove ecosystems is a challenging endeavor, given often conflicting interests are involved, which demands cross-sectoral planning and integrated management approaches. And here we'll mention one of the things that, in our experience at least, is really competing with protecting or restoring mangroves, and that is shrimp production. If we want to save mangroves, we have to find ways to have a much more sustainable shrimp production that respects mangroves around the coast. So that is one of the big tasks that also has to be achieved. And that is also why I believe in the importance of the work of the initiative, and I'm very happy to see the results which were just presented. The Mangrove Principles, a handbook for decision makers to guide the sustainable management of mangrove ecosystems. These guiding principles were made possible through the extensive collaboration of experts from science, from NGOs and other organizations with the Save Our Mangroves Now initiative. In each of the 5 major fields of action, the guidance reflects how to face existing challenges when working towards sustainable management of mangrove ecosystems. Well, and now I'm looking forward, together with you, to hearing the views from our partners from the Western Indian Ocean region, and of course also to seeing the principles being applied on the ground. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. And I just asked, we had one slide with, there we go, so that you actually know what we're talking about. These are the 5 major principles, as I mentioned before, about good governance, engaged and equitable society, again, bound by sound science and knowledge, a just, sustainable economy, as well as for environmental and social benefits, but also implementing sustainable conservation finance. So these documents are all available, but we really hope that along those sort of 5 major themes, we can really rally up between the countries to move action on mangrove. So now we have one of our collaborators on the Save Our Mangroves Now could not be here, Wetlands International. So we will hear quickly a video from Julie Molonga, Director for Eastern Africa from Wetlands International. If we could switch, to the video, thank you. It's been a long day, and actually we could give him a round of applause because he's done a fantastic job, 4 days, really on the IT here behind. So wonderful, thank you.
Distinguished speakers and guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure and honor to be part of this launch event of the guiding principles on sustainable mangrove ecosystem management. In the Western Indian Ocean, sustainable mangrove conservation and management is actually a pressing issue. It has been gaining prominence in recent times as our region has experienced degradation of this vital ecosystem. We have witnessed mangrove forests being cleared to pave way for infrastructure development. There are also losses from overexploitation, from land use changes, from pollution, and more recently, from climate change. Efforts from mangrove champions that include the Global Mangrove Alliance and the Save Our Mangroves Now consortia, which Wetlands International is a part of, are actually helping to raise the profile and visibility of mangroves as critical ecosystems that transform lives in the Western Indian Ocean, not only at the national but also at the regional and global scales. For example, here in Kenya, we have seen a tangible reminder of the linkages between mangroves and coastal resilience in the stabilization of coastlines, where they actually reduce erosion from storm surges and tides, and the continued productivity of the fishery sector through its habitat function. So as we continue to elevate the value of mangroves in development agendas, I sincerely hope that these guiding principles, which align very closely with the work of the Global Mangrove Alliance, will continue to help the policymakers who are responsible for mangrove ecosystem management to formulate national priorities linked to the conservation of these coastal forests. So Wetlands International, on behalf of the Global Mangrove Alliance, states its support of the guiding principles on sustainable mangrove ecosystem management, including conservation, protection, restoration, and sustainable use of mangroves.
Wonderful. Thank you to have Julie here with us, at least in a virtual format. Yeah, now, well, you heard already Kenya was mentioned, and also from Ambassador Thompson, a leader in the field. I had in my notes, obviously, also that vis-a-vis the Climate Convention and the nationally determined contribution, Kenya has also put nature-based solutions, mangrove, in sort of the proposal towards climate action, which is quite exciting. So maybe we'll hear a few words about that from our distinguished Honorable Mohamed Elmi, who's the Chief Administrative Secretary for Environment and Forestry in Kenya. If I can invite you to the podium.
Thank you for inviting me. I just want to recognize members of Parliament who oversight environment. Sophia, who is the Vice Chair of the Committee of Parliament. Nasri is a member. Yara is a member, and she's the clerk from our Parliament. They are very necessary for the money we get, so it's good they're here, and they are supportive of the mangrove. I just want to start with saying that as Kenya, we have no problem and we support the principles. Let's make them less wordier and make them, easy. The same principles that we use, quite a lot of it. I just wanted also to say that in Kenya we have had a strategy for 2017 to 2027 for mangrove management, which all the partners, WWF, IUCN, all others are coming together. And we've realized a major, gap in terms of where we have lost either to settlement or other uses. But also we have good news. So the community, which is one of the principles here, if you go to Lamu, then you can see the traditional use of mangrove. And when we had a moratorium in 2018 across the country, all forests, they came and said, look, why are you doing this? Because we benefit from this. Our children can't go to school, but we use traditional methods. So they don't use power saws. They use the traditional tools. They use canoes to enter. And they took me around to show that where they're harvesting traditionally is the mangrove is healthier than the protected mangrove, area. And they say when the traditional way of harvesting allows mangrove to regenerate. So it will be a good thing for people to see. So we agree with the principle of coordination and partnership. I think the other thing is for communities to continue looking after them, like Lamu, the direct benefit has to be seen. For them, it is their livelihoods, and they see the importance of it. They also need support of government in terms of those who come to spoil, who want to cut too much. The communities want to be able to report and something is done about it. Political support is very important. I was surprised at the governor, the senator of the area, the members of parliament were all on community side in terms of actually taking care of that biodiversity. And finally, just to say what everybody else is saying, how important mangrove is. It is a key pillar for biodiversity. So we talk about biodiversity. How do you do it? Make sure mangroves are working. It is going to restore a lot of biodiversity. It is a pillar of the blue economy. That's where a lot of business for people. The new Great Blue Wall Initiative, this will be, mangrove would be a key element in that one. Carbon sequestration, we have communities who are already getting money because of that. And I think what the scientists tell me, it is 10 times sequestration, not 4 times as the previous speaker said. And therefore, then it protects from tsunami, a lot of other things. And in my view, it is doable. The areas that are covered, if communities, county government, local governments, and the experts come together, in my view, it is something that is doable, and we should do it in view of the fact that it is a pillar for all the agreements we are having, from biodiversity to climate change, everything. So I support the slogan, Roots for Hope. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Again, extremely inspiring, and I think it's day 5 of the convention, but it's information, the speeches like this that inspire, that make us, give even more to it and make things happen. So thank you very, very much. And indeed, you brought up the Great Blue Wall, so I want to call upon Thomas Saberna. He's our regional colleagues from the Eastern and Southern African Regional Office of IUCN, and he's the 2021 young leader of the French African Foundation. And he is sort of the brainchild behind the Great Blue Wall, so he can tell us all about it and what you can expect next on it. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. And thank you, Vice Minister, and great to be here with you all. Indeed, I think the reality is that all those great work is already happening. I think you've mentioned already, people are already restoring mangrove. And those mangrove principles really will help us or guide us to be more efficient in what we do. Now, not only do we need to be more efficient, but we need to go faster and much bigger. Well, this is exactly what the Great Blue Wall will be about, and I'm extremely happy now today with Vice Ministers and the Minister that unfortunately had to leave, but we had a very, very productive meeting earlier in the Congress, and we've agreed that we will actually officially launch the Great Blue Wall initiative with the heads of state later in the year. So that's going to be quite something. It's going to, I guess, the Congress is going to be like holidays in comparison with what we have ahead of us. But it's going to be very exciting because this is really what we hope, at least, that it's going to accelerate and dramatically scale up the level of ambition, but also actually on the ground, the action on the ground, because we know what needs to happen. We basically know where it needs to happen. It just needs to happen. And that's exactly what this initiative will be about. I guess when it comes to mangrove, the key target will be net gain of mangrove cover by 2030, and then obviously sort of following the path of full restoration by 2050. In that sense, I will echo, obviously, Giuseppe call for the 20% sort of restoration, and this is exactly sort of the vision that we need to go for. And now I think now the work is actually in front of us. The stars are aligning, the momentum is here. Obviously, we're going to work not only on mangrove, but because we need to have this holistic approach, we will work on seagrass, we'll work on corals, we'll work on MPAs, so that together and as a region, we can really achieve a nature-positive world. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Thomas. Indeed. And also, as Save Our Mangroves Now and as our colleagues from BMZ said, we've been working both on the international side, but specifically with the Western Indian Ocean countries and colleagues for some time to help build those partnerships. And it's really also a pleasure for us to see that this is now happening in the region. We came to the end of the program, and I know that the plenaries are waiting for us. So I would rather take it and at this stage say thank you to everyone for their contribution. It has been inspiring in the various sort of messages that we heard. And I would really like to keep that with the roots of hope, that we continue from here, and hopefully not in 3 or 4 years when we have the next Conservation Congress, but actually as it looks like the conference marathon is about to begin again, that we take stock, that we held ourselves accountable for the promises, the action we want to take, and really ramp up the work on mangroves, but coastal ecosystem overall. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.